Well, Lyle, it's a great way to end the offseason that John Stanton does a sit down with friend of the podcast, Paul Sylvie on King 5 this week. He had some things to say. You did a social post today. You go check it out on our Instagram and Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, wherever you want to get that. If you have missed it, it'll be 48 hours after when this episode comes out on opening day. But if you somehow missed it, go back on our page. Lyle had a really good reaction to that and some of the stuff John Stanton talked about this week. What stood out to you the most?
Before I even get into this, let's preface this here. On our little timer, it says we've been recording for 3 minutes and 54 seconds so far. Let's cap this around the 10 to 12 minute mark, because if you let me, I could go for a long time about this. So I'm not going to do that. We have season predictions to get to. It's supposed to be a happy time. When you guys are listening to this, it's opening day. It should be fun. I want it to be fun. We're the positive podcast too. But unfortunately, there are some things we have to talk about because the owner of our favorite baseball team finally spoke about everything that went on this offseason. And if anything stood out to me, TJ, there's a few things, but if I had to pick one, it's the same thing that everybody's talking about. John Stanton took it upon himself to throw Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander under the bus, saying baseball decisions, they're made by them, not me. It's their decisions, what they do. I usually back them up, but it's their decisions. That's what stood out to me, because Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander made decisions based off the payroll budget that they were given and the premises they were given by John Stanton himself. And then he sits on public television saying, no, it wasn't my decision. No, it was. It was your decision. So don't act like it wasn't.
So here's where I'm going to start on this. So you're right. He was essentially passing the buck off to Justin Hollander and Jerry Dipoto. Yes, they do make the baseball decisions. They get paid a lot of money to make very important baseball decisions. I hated the framing of how he made it sound like it was he essentially framed it as their choice to cut payroll in the offseason and have these bad optic trades. Like the Jared Kelenic trade, which was objectively the low point of the offseason, made it sound like, well, yeah, it was their decision to cut payroll, right? And with no mention of like, well, they had to cut payroll because the team needed to get better without a payroll increase. The payroll is about the same as it was last year. Right now, it'll probably go a little bit above what it was last season. As the season takes its course, they call some guys up. They'll trade for somebody, sign for somebody. It'll go above that mark. But I didn't like how that sounded. What else, man? I didn't like how he almost made it sound that like they could have made no baseball decisions. The payroll would have stayed the same and he would have been like, okay. That's kind of the imprint I got because of the baseball moves were their decision. If they made no baseball moves, then it would be like, well, I trust them. They're the baseball people, but the payroll stays the same regardless. I will add one last note. Remember that John Stanton alone does not control the payroll. He is on a board of people who make the financial decisions for the Mariners. Mm-hmm. So everything we say here today on this podcast in this 10-minute window that Lyle has so graciously given us to talk about this subject is not only directed at John Stanton, it is directed at the Mariners ownership group, mm-hmm. because they all have a say in what happens with this team. The point Jason Churchill brought up on Wednesday I'm getting my days mixed up because we're releasing on different days this week. On Tuesday's episode, if you missed it, go back and listen to it. Jason's the best. He mentioned, listen, like we all know that Scott Service and Jerry Dipoto are lame duck for now the third time in their tenure. 3 times now they've entered a season without a contract for the next season. And he's like, maybe they just don't like this. 3 times in 4 years that Jerry Dipoto's offseason plans have gone up in flames because ownership doesn't want to spend. Who doesn't want to be there like that? And, when you get to put a face to it and you hear some comments like this, you're like, yeah, I kind of get it.
Here's what I'd say to that. If the Yankees have another disappointing season and finally, after all these years, they finally decide, like it's time to move on from Brian Cashman and they have to find somebody else, is Jerry not going to get an interview for that if the Mariners make the playoffs again this year? If they have 4 straight 88-plus win seasons and 3 out of 4 90-win seasons with essentially, I don't want to say no payroll budget, but a very, very limited one. Are there not going to be teams around the league that look at that and say, well, what can this guy do with actual money to spend? I'd say the same thing about the Padres if AJ Preller gets fired. There's another.
And a clarification to that, we won't know if Jerry Dipoto will be 4 straight seasons of 88 wins because there's no chance he makes it to the end of the season without a contract, without definitively knowing whether he's going to be here next year. Like either Jerry Dipoto is gone by August, right? Or yeah.
Well,
If he does not have a contract, there's no way Jerry Dipoto makes it from Thursday to the last day of September without a contract for next season, or he's gone before that. There's no way that happens. No chance.
Is there no like free agency hits, so to speak?
Not with executives, not with coaches, not with executives. If he does not have a contract signed by like August 1st, like I think that'd be pretty telling.
Yeah.
Of either how he thinks or what the ownership thinks. Because we don't know the terms of the contract. We don't know if he's getting lowballed. We don't know if he's asking for more. We don't know that. But it makes sense, right? If he doesn't want to go, he might just say make up an excuse to fire me or something like that. Like something like that. But like there's no way he makes it to September or August without guarantees for next season, because either he knows his market is hot elsewhere with more resources, or he decides to sign back with Seattle. Those are the options. There's no like, I'm going to hit free agency and test it out. He's not a player. He doesn't do that. Either you're signed or you're not.
All right. So, I mean, and usually around the early September mark is when we've seen him and Scott get these extensions. So maybe it would be around then, and we'll see how the season's playing out by that point. We would certainly hope they're right in it. But again, if you're John Stanton and you want to keep these guys around, these comments aren't helping. You just heard what Churchill said on Tuesday's episode. He said, Jerry Dipoto is the best general manager the Mariners have ever had. Honestly, I agree with him. And I think a lot of you should too, because again, it was kind of like he was talking about Pat Gillick might have had the 116 win season and a lot of success when he was here, but he sold out to win big in a couple of different seasons, like a couple different times. Jerry hasn't done that. Like Jerry's put a sustainable product on the field with not a whole lot of money to work with. So if you're John Stanton, and you want to keep Dipoto around, I don't know how you think deflecting blame onto those guys is a good idea. And also maybe my biggest problem with this whole thing is if you're not going to spend the money, you yourself need to take accountability for that. If you don't want to hurt profits or even risk profits, then sure, then that's your answer. But he wouldn't say that. He didn't say that in the interview. Instead, he's deflecting blame. If you don't want to spend money, I think most people know at this point, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I think most Mariners fans know at this point that John Stanton plays a big factor, if not he's not the entire factor because there's an ownership group, but he plays a big factor into why the Mariners are not spending money. So I think people know it's not, the front office is choosing to go this route. No, they're forced to go this route. So if you're Stanton and that's your philosophy, people aren't going to like it, but at least be honest about it. That's my whole thing. Because the way he conducted that interview made it seem like he was trying to outsmart a lot of fans and say, oh, well, actually we're doing this. But I think a lot of fans know that look, you chose not to spend money.
And I think that's the biggest problem with this whole interview. Like you just said it, trying to outsmart people. We're not stupid. People can read between the lines of what stuff like this means. And either you give legitimate reason, hey, we're not doing well financially. We needed to keep payroll where it was, or we fully intend when we get our TV situation worked out that we are going to raise our payroll to a competitive edge. That's what people want to hear for someone who said, I want to get as many bites at the World Series as we possibly can. You know, a pretty good way to do that, winning the division. You know, the Mariners haven't done, the Mariners have not won a division, right? Under this ownership group, they've not won a division since 2001. Right. That's probably the best way to get so many bites at the apple to potentially win a World Series. And if you listen to John Stanton speak, he's like, hey, I want to have a very competitive team to get into the playoffs as often as we can so we can give ourselves all these chances to make it to the World Series. Well, the problem is like the current allocation is not quite allowing that. But anyways, back to the whole smarter point. Like, I'm gonna try not to like piss anyone off here, but like, like it's like rich people aren't relatable at all, really. For the rest of us, the 99.9% of us, like we're not like John Stanton. None of us will ever live a life like John Stanton does. He's incredibly successful in his field to do all this stuff, but just because you've made it like this doesn't mean that it's like I got this for you guys. Like just take my word for it. And it's like, no, like I think most of us can see like how the cookie is made, right? And it's frustrating.
Like, honestly, like you asked me what stood out to me the most about this interview, and it is what he said about Jerry and Justin, and that's what everybody's talking about. What really disgruntled me the most in this interview is probably when he said I was just as frustrated and disappointed as all of the players with the results during game 162 out on that field, knowing we were not going to the postseason. Like, here's my problem with that. We heard players and how frustrated they were about not making the playoffs last year. You saw this entire group and in this entire core of players, the leaders of this team, work their tail off to have a better 2024. Like, and we saw it in spring training. They were motivated. They were excited. You could tell all the work all these guys put in. The players took action. Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander took action. They were unhappy. They went out and, despite essentially having their hands tied, went out and made a roster that is very competitive in 2024. Maybe the best roster they've assembled. They did that with essentially no budget to work with. They deserve a ton of props, like we've talked about. Scott Service was not happy with how the season ended. He went out and met with all of his players to make amends and get on the same page with all the leaders of his team. He's traveling around the country all offseason. He goes to the DR to talk to Luis Castillo. He took matters into his own hands. There was no action from John Stanton. Like, actions speak louder than words here. You say you're frustrated and disappointed. What you can do yourself to help this team is give the front office all the resources they need to win. And that includes money. Again, everybody else went above and beyond and did their part. The players, front office, Scott Service and the coaching staff, everybody. What irks me is hearing Stanton say, I was super frustrated and disappointed, but you have control of the somewhat of the outcome of this team and the direction of this team, but you didn't take anything into your own hands and take action. It was just a lot of words. That's where I had my issue.
So the action was the problem, and then there's no explanation for that. No public explanation. Like he could have told Paul Sylvie, listen, guys, we're like, they did talk about the roots. They did talk about Root Sports, by the way. No one's talking about that part of the conversation, but they did in fact talk about Root Sports, and he threw out the number, when we bought it, 3.3 million. And when, as it currently sits, it's like 1.2 million cable subscribers with people unsubscribing every day. And as we've talked about here on this podcast, a very famous clip of ours where we said, well, that doesn't really matter. It sounds like a you problem rather than an us problem because we didn't purchase Root Sports. So in conclusion of all this, because I know we've zoomed right past that artificial timer you set, I don't think most fan bases like their ownership in any sport. Could you name one? Like one fan base that likes their owners?
The Mets.
Do they like Steve Cohen?
Spends
Do they
a lot
all
of
like
money.
Steve Cohen? Do they actually all like Steve Cohen? Just because you spend money, it actually doesn't make you a good owner.
No.
It gives good indication, but
okay.
Like, I'd say he has a higher approval rating than John Stanton does, but
how about the Dodgers and Mark Walter? Who could hate that guy after? See, like, now that's a team that took action. I mean, the Dodgers are the model standard in baseball, of course, but you know what? They lost in the first round again last year. They had a roster that on paper was nowhere near as good as some of the rosters they've had in the past. As a result, despite having a good regular season, a very good one, they lost in the first round. They said, we're not doing that again. They went out and signed the best player on the planet, maybe the best player of all time in Shohei, and they went and got Yoshinobu Yamamoto for $300 million. Like, they took action. Nobody's saying John Stanton had to go spend $1 billion, but there were guys out there in free agency that absolutely would have helped this team, and they opted not to spend any money. So anyway, yes, there are owners I think that are liked. It's not a lot, but some. No?
It's pretty low. It's a pretty small number. Probably a minuscule number. And it all boils back to my point that there is nothing you and I can relate to a billionaire owner in any sport. any sport of anything. Like there's no relation at all. And that doesn't help. Like people feel like they like the players a lot because they can relate to them. That's why people love college athletics, because you can actually relate to the athletes. Because you went to college, I went to college. A lot of these people went to college, and they go watch a college sporting event. I relate to that guy. I used to be a college player. I used to be a college student. But like you and I are never going to be billionaires. Like you can like go to bed tonight knowing that you and I will never have that much money ever in our life. So like there's no relational aspect to that. And you know, sure, that means it could be a little bit harder to actually get people over to your side, but when the actions don't give you any more reason to, man, it just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And here we are sitting still talking about payroll. The opening day is on fucking Thursday, and we are still talking about payroll. Like,
Yeah,
god damn it.
like and don't and like let me say this too. I didn't want to do this. Like I really didn't want to sit here and have this conversation. We know we had to because it's in the news, people are talking about it. We talked about it on social media. That's why we're sitting here talking about it. But again, like and you keep saying 2 days from opening day. When we're recording this, we're 2
Yeah.
days from opening day. Everybody listening, it's opening day. I want the vibes to be high. You should want the vibes to be high. This team is exciting. I don't want that to be buried. This is a very good roster with an elite pitching staff, a lineup that's much improved, and this team can go out and have a great year. Like, if you took anything out of this conversation, let me make that abundantly clear. This is a very good team, and you should be excited. I'm excited. When I'm at opening day on Thursday, I'm going to be excited. But like, I hate that 2 days before we had to sit here and have this conversation again. Instead of just having all the vibes high going into opening day, we're sitting here talking about it. Like, which, yes, to your point, why are we still talking about payroll? We shouldn't have to.
And this isn't going to be the last media appearance for John Stanton. He every opening day will go on Brock and Salk and talk with them. So he'll be talking with them when this episode comes out on Thursday morning. So we'll see what he says then. But we'll find out. Oh, like I saw Paul Sylvie getting some comments of how he didn't rail on John Stanton enough. Like just a peek behind the curtain. That interview doesn't work if Paul Sylvie's not cooperating with John Stanton, because if we're gonna
Yeah, no, and I was gonna say, like,
yeah
and to piggyback off you, King 5 and the Mariners have a partnership too.
yeah
Like, I don't want to sound like the whole snobby media people here, like, oh, TJ and I went to journalism school, that, this, and that. But I just to like inform people, like as two people who work in journalism and or in media and know how it works. Like there are relationships here. I know it's easy for a lot of people on Twitter to just say, "Oh, we should have grilled him and he should have asked them all these hard hitting questions." King 5 and the Mariners have a partnership. Paul Sylvie does that, like there's a real relationship that's absolutely burned there. So he can't do that. No, not only would he not, he can't.
yeah yeah. So that's why he didn't do that. And unfortunately, not all the questions on Twitter get asked and answered. So there's that.